Food and Beverage Magazine Live, bringing food and beverage to life. With your hosts, James Beard Award winner Jennifer English and Food and Beverage Magazine publisher Michael Politz. Featuring leaders in the hospitality, branded food and beverage, and CPG industries, many of whom are Jennifer and Michael's friends in the business. For an informal and informative conversation where friends in the business share the latest intel, ideas, and best practices. Live, juicy inside scoop from the tastemakers, newsmakers, bread bakers, drink shakers, spoon lickers, clam diggers, farms, foodies, and friends of the food and beverage magazine world. Here are your hosts, Jennifer English and Michael Politz.
I raised my glass.
Uh-huh.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. We have
hello.
And happy Juneteenth.
Yes, happy Juneteenth. Very important. Hi. I'm waiting for the UPS guy to get here because my books are coming in.
They're coming in today.
Today, literally today.
Any
second. I did a promo video I want to show you. Can you mind if I put that on real quick? Okay.
Can you?
Are you ready?
Let's see it.
I think I can. All right.
Whether you are thinking about becoming a restaurateur or you are already in the business, Michael Politz has written a must-read, the Food and Beverage Magazine's Guide to Restaurant Success. Pick up your copy today at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million, or wherever fine books are sold.
Isn't that fun? What do you think of that?
Listen, the book is amazing, and I'm going to...
By the way, I did not fly to Jakarta to have that done. I just want you to know. I just had it done.
What's exciting about your project and the book being published, and literally we're at launch date, is that the things that made a restaurant successful before are going to be the exact sorts of things that are going to make any business in the food business and food industry successful moving forward. And that part of where we go next is going to require a lot of the same essentials. But that's my interpretation. Talk a little bit about how that book is actually going to be as meaningful in the future and as we redefine what a restaurant is.
I mean, the book itself is how to succeed in the restaurant business, right? It's how to succeed. So you could have a restaurant you want to be, if you want to open a restaurant, there's a chapter that says for $25,000, you can open your own restaurant. Bottom line. Now, unbelievable because there's going to be a lot of space. I mean, it's a little harder because you have to keep people separate. You have to wear masks. I mean, there's rules to follow, but if you follow the rules, you're going to be fine. Yeah. The book goes into marketing. It goes into costing. It goes into the crap that people are telling you that isn't true, right? It goes into how to respond to people like Yelp and all these people with negative reviews, right? It tells you how to cast your restaurant as the show that it's supposed to be. But the first couple chapters will tell you while you're reading this, it's going to help you make a decision whether you want to take this leap. And it's a leap of faith, right? And it tells you go through the process. It's all about processes, right? So you're going to go through the process. I always talk about writing down on yellow pad. Am I boring you? You're looking at
No. I'm getting a sip.
Okay. Oh, a sip. You're writing down on yellow pads, all kinds of, so it's just a matter of working the process. And if you follow the rules, the process, you're good. It's not rocket science. It's a restaurant. And if you're nice and you've got hospitality and you're convivial, you're going to do well, right? It's true. I know you like the word conviviality, but if you have conviviality at your place of business, you're going to do well. It's a matter of fact, right? The problem is lose your ego, get rid of your ego, do whatever. There's a lot of things that you have to get rid of, right? And most of it has to do. Jennifer, I think the books just got here. I'm not even kidding.
You need to go get them?
I'm looking out. I see the UPS guy bending over. It's either the books or something else is going on out there.
Yay!
You know what? We're going to get the next guest up, the first guest. I mean, this guy's a legend. You hear the doorbell? Now the dog goes. Here we go. This is called working from home. This is called quarantine fabulousness. We're going to open this book live. I hope you're going to announce the guest right now. I'm going to put him on. I'm going to run out and get the book.
The introduction.
We're going to interrupt him. So don't get him on a tangent. We're going to interrupt the guy, and we're going to open the book. Okay, go ahead. Who's our first guest? Who's coming up, Jen? Who is it?
The Broadbent name is legendary in the wine world for being negociants and auctioneers and purveyors, and they make beautiful wines, but they've been in the wine world a long time, sort of even before those of us in North America knew.
Jen, speed it up. I want to get to the door. Speed it up.
Bartholomew Broadbent joins us now from his studio and offices in Richmond, Virginia. We welcome him to Food and Beverage Magazine Live. Bartholomew, how are you?
I'm great. I'm just listening to you guys thinking you're completely nuts, and I love it.
We're a little nuts.
Jennifer is nuts. She's actually certified nuts. She's a certified pecan grower. Is that true? Certified nuts?
I actually just leased the land, but I'll take it.
You leased the land? I love that. All right, you guys chit-chat. I'll be back. This is the magic of television.
Go get your book.
Go get the book. Hey, Bartholomew Broadbent joins us, and I want to do a little bit more of an introduction because I think it's really important for people to understand the reason why on this Juneteenth day of before Father's Day that I thought long and hard about all the people that we could invite on. And we had actually scheduled you to be on with us last week, and we had some technical difficulties due to the wildfires, which sadly are still burning, but we've worked out the technological bits. And we arranged for you to be on today, and I was going to have you on with other guests. And then I thought a lot about it. And part of the reason today is such a better fit for you is because it is Father's Day. And we wanted to make sure that we talked about your father and the legacy of his work in the wine world and in Broadbent selections. One of the most revered and legendary men in the wine world. And I also wanted to comment on something that came about just in the last couple of days on Facebook. There's a marvelous auction taking place, and you want to know how small the wine world and the food world are. We were commenting on the auction and the collection.
We don't want to know. We don't want to tell them. It's a surprise, isn't it? Why are you ruining all the surprises today? Is it a surprise or is it not? From what I understood, it's a surprise. Okay,
well, we're having a surprise later. So, and is the book here?
I don't know. I got a box. Shall we open it?
Thank you for being here and being a good sport while we have this.
All right, bye. It was good seeing you guys.
No, you're staying on. We're not done with you. Only a true legend like yourself can be here at a moment like this. Shall we open it, Jen?
Absolutely.
Live on Facebook? I better start getting some.
This is like the complete opposite of Kitchen Confidential. It's telling you how to do it, not how not to do it, right?
Wait a minute. That's the wrong box. Actually. Can you believe it? That's the wrong box. I'm not even kidding. Hold on. You guys keep chatting. I'll be back.
Anyway, Bartholomew Broadbent, welcome. Let's talk a little bit about Broadbent Selections, a wine label that can be found virtually coast to coast with some of the most extraordinary varietals and lovely expressions of wines of their type, many of which you've helped to publicize and introduce us to, educate us about, and delight us with. Let's talk about your wine world. Tell us about Broadbent Selections.
So, Broadbent Selections. Do you want me to go back a little bit to my life in the wine world? Because it works up to that bit about Broadbent Selections.
Do you have a sip with you? Are you sipping something now?
I have this bottle with me.
And I have a sip too. So cheers.
Cheers. So yeah, basically I grew up in the wine business. My father, as you alluded, is called Michael Broadbent. He started the wine auctions at Christie's in 1966, and then he started auctions in America for Hugh Blind, and then the Napa Valley Wine Auction with Bob Mondavi. And his world was wine auctions. And then he wrote a couple of books, one which I see you got a James Beard Award, and his also won the James Beard Award for this one, the Vintage Wine, which is basically his tasting notes on wine. But then he also wrote 433 consecutive monthly columns for Decanter magazine. Then last year he turned 92 last year on May 2nd. On April So on May 1st, he published his last book, which is this one called Wine Tasting. And on April 25th of last year, he got married for the second time.
Wow.
But then unfortunately in June, he fell off a chair and broke his back. But don't worry, they fixed the chair.
But he was married. Are you sure he fell off the chair? Or is that just what he? You, by the way, look very good for a baby. So you're recently. He just got married, the dad, and then he had Bartholomew. See what
That's
I'm saying?
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He matured very quickly and well. What do you think, Jeff?
In 1 year, I've gone from 0 to 58, I think. Yeah, but that's wine for you. So anyway, so he died this year in March. No, don't worry, it was his time.
No, I'm worried about the new wife and the problems with the family.
Yeah, well, she had a short-lived marriage. It was a bit of a bummer for her, I suppose. But anyway, that was in England, and I live in Richmond, Virginia, so I'm stuck here. But anyway, when I left England when I was 20 to go and work for a company in Canada. I worked there for 4 years and met the Symington family, who gave me a job in the US to start a company for them and to teach Americans about port and Madeira. So for the next 10 years, I was teaching Americans about port and Madeira all over the country till I reached a glass ceiling. I didn't marry one of her daughters. I had to leave. I'd met a girl and I thought she said Virgin, but it turned out to be Virginia. So now I live in Virginia, Richmond. And I've been here for about 12, 13 years.
Jennifer, I'm seeing a Broadbent pattern of fine young ladies and the men of the Broadbent family. That's what I'm seeing here right now. The wine and the young ladies, they'll do anything for these girls.
You know what?
Yeah.
If you wanted to talk about how to do things right, to enjoy your life, to work in something about which you have enormous passion, that you can share with others in the spirit of conviviality. That idea of living well is the best revenge. I think this is a testament to that. And on this Father's Day weekend, and I wanted to say, our condolences on the loss of your dad, but when he's such a giant in the world of wine, it really is a loss for all of us. And so we all have to say, how sorry we were that you lost him. But let's talk a little.
So what you're saying is that his dad had all the knowledge and the power and the abilities in wine, and Bartholomew was just a guy that lives in Richmond and drinks good wine. What are you saying, Jennifer? What is that? What is it she's saying? Are you picking up all right, I'm just making sure we're picking up the same thing here.
Yeah. That's basically it. Yeah.
Wow, Jen, you know how to make a guy feel good.
This can be a really short interview, can't it?
Right? My God.
I want to point out the obvious, which I'm actually quite adept at. If you go back to the original James Beard Award-winning book about vintage wines, when the auction businesses started in the 1960s, Bartholomew, we would talk about the kinds of wines that would make it to auction. And they were, clarets and Bordeaux's and Burgundies and ports and Madeiras and maybe some champagnes and maybe some brandies and Armagnacs. Talk a little bit about what that world used to mean and how the world has become aware of what that collecting. Oh, I'm sorry. There goes the question. Michael, congratulations.
Live. By the way, Bartholomew, this makes us family now.
No, James Beard Award coming your way too, I'm sure.
There it is, guys.
That's
wow. Pretty cool.
Congratulations.
You know where to send mine.
That's awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. So how do we order that?
Oh, you don't have to order. We'll send you one. But it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. It's supposed to be in more bookstores, but I don't know what's going on with if they're even open right now.
Well, you're going to sell a lot more because the only place you can buy this one is on my website, broadbent.com.
What? Now you can pick up Food and Beverage Magazine's Guide to Restaurant Success at broadbent.com. It was so nice of you to offer that, Bartholomew. I'm sweating. You know what I smell?
New book?
I smell James Beard Award. I smell a James Beard Award. New book. All right, you guys keep talking. I don't want to interrupt. This is horrible of me with such a celebrity. Sorry about that, Jennifer.
Don't worry, I love it. I love it.
Oh, look who's on. Now the guest just popped on. Let's bring her in, and then you guys can talk, and then I can disappear for a minute. Ready?
Well, okay. Enjoy your, so recently, last couple of days, Bartholomew, I do want to talk about the auction business, but you were commenting that an auction is coming up. And it was a seller of, and I'll let you tell the story, and it ties together with the guest who's joining us today.
So there's a guy called Ben Ichinose. Ben Ichinose is a Japanese American. He was in the dentistry business in California, and in the 1960s he fell in love with wine and he started collecting wine. And back then the wine auction business was just taking off. You could buy the legendary wines for a pittance, and he built one of the finest cellars in the world. And he died last year, and his cellar is going up for auction July 16th at Christie's online. And I apologize for most of the guests who probably won't be able to afford some of these wines, but it is probably
wow. Is he underestimating our audience? Go ahead.
It's one of the greatest wine cellars ever to come to auction. There's a wine from 1730. There are all the legendary great Bordeaux and Burgundies. And I was staying with the family who their house in California in January, just before lockdown, and I went to see the cellar. It's a spectacular cellar. Perfect conditions. He had 3 main rooms, basically, for his $55,000 bottle collection.
Wow.
One room was about 58 degrees or 55 degrees, which is room cellar temperature, and then another one, the coldest part, was 48. So the ports and Madeiras he kept at sort of 55 because he wanted those to age normally, but the really great Bordeaux and other wines which are more fragile, he kept those at cooler temperatures. So basically these wines have been stored better than any other wine cellar in the world, because they were designed, the house was basically built, they didn't even move into it until the cellar was built. It's just a great cellar. On my Facebook page, which is the Bartholomew Broadbent Facebook, you can check out the press release, and then I'm going to be posting the catalog in the next few days, just so people can see it, because
send it to us.
It's
Jennifer, have him send it to us so we can run it in the magazine as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll get Christie's. Yeah, exactly. Well, you'll see it.
Make that happen.
He kind of didn't like that I said that. Did you hear? He was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever."
No, you're welcome to.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Christie's will send it to you.
Just a small country that we just get read by a small country every month. That's all. Go ahead. Yeah. Back to you, Jen.
No, but
introduce the next guest so we can interview with her. He's going to get so excited.
She's going to be far more interesting than your current guest, obviously.
Not as pretty as my current guest. Not as pretty.
She's got a tattoo of the Broadbent crest tattooed to her.
I'm getting a broad. Let me just show everybody that if it'll work. Let's see if it'll work. And you can see. Look at this. Look at this. This is gorgeous.
And where are you having it tattooed?
I'm not allowed to say on a live stream program. I'm afraid that we'll get banned. We don't want to be banned in live stream.
But I can tell you.
Oh, he said the word. He said the word. Right. But I can tell you.
But you know what it is.
Nevertheless, I can tell you that. All right, but go ahead, Jennifer. Introduce.
All right.
We can have a nice
Bartholomew, we're going to jump around a bit today, and I want to make sure before we do anything else, though, that we talk about the wines that are the perfect summer wines that are Broadbent selections, including one of my all-time favorites, the Vinho Verde, a Portuguese wine that is the ultimate warm weather luncheon wine. If you're not going to have a rosé, have a Vinho Verde. I think it's one of the most food-friendly wines in the world. I think it's completely underappreciated, and one of the best expressions of it anywhere is the Broadbent. I've been fangirling and gushing over this for many years on Facebook. And poor Bartholomew's like, who is this bloody woman in Arizona who keeps tapping me to say hello and cheers? But
what's interesting is because it's when Cosmopolitan just named the rosé version of our Broadbent Vino Verde as the best rosé for spring. And that's when you contacted me and said, hey, come on the show and talk about it. I don't have a bottle of the rosé next to me, but I do have this one, and it's a really good selling wine.
And last week you were going to be on because a week ago Saturday was National Rosé Day.
Right. You know, tomorrow is National Chenin Blanc Day, and there are going to be lots of shenanigans around that.
So as we were going back and forth on Facebook, and the announcement of the Ichino's collection was brought up, and we were commenting on it, one of our all-time favorite food friends in the business said, hey, I know that seller. And we had this fantastic small world connection and conversation. And the one and only Carol Chin, who's originally from the Bay Area of San Francisco, and whose dad was friends with the good doctor who put this legendary cellar together, had said, I know that, and said, come on and let's talk about this. So Carol Chin, the living legend, welcome back.
The legend. I'm just going to keep coming back with nothing else for the Chirons. I mean, they make my whole day.
Better to be a living legend than a not living one.
Now, Carol, have you ever worked with Bartholomew on an event?
I'm sure. I produced a lot of food and wine festivals, so I feel like back in the days of either the Bon Appetit Wine and Spirits Focus with Andy Blue, or you're not through Southern, are you?
No, not at all. I used to be on Andy Blue's tasting panel. For Bon
exactly.
Appetit.
Okay, so it would have been those. The Food Network Festival is Southern, so they blocked out a lot of.
I was the director of the reserve tastings for Food and Wine Classic in Aspen for 25 years, so we might have crossed paths there.
But we definitely crossed paths, yeah.
And that's where I had first met Bartholomew, so at the top of the mountain, as they say. One of the things, Carol, that was so astonishing to me as I did a little bit more research on this upcoming auction and this extraordinary collection was a cellar of 55,000 bottles, each of which was curated with extraordinary connoisseurship and discernment. Bartholomew, did your dad help put this collection together?
Well, certainly a lot of it came from the Christie's wine auctions in the 60s and 70s. You know, famous cellars like the Blair Castle and many back then. So prior to 1966, there were no wine auctions. So when my father started the wine auctions, he just went around Europe and England and Scotland and France, Germany, wherever, Austria, pillaging the great cellars of the world. And basically, people had no way to sell wine before that. So, and maybe someone's grandfather had a great wine collection, but the kids had no interest in wine. And there are some cellars which hadn't been opened for 2 generations.
Wow.
And these all came up for auctions in the 60s and 70s, and they became Glance Castle, and they were just legendary cellars. And the American collectors started collecting these wines, and there were some really famous cellars like Lou Skinner and Marvin Overton and Lloyd Flatt, and Benicinosi is one of them, and all the others have been sold. So this is really the last one that I'm aware of, and it is probably the last great cellar to come up for auction, which has the perfect provenance, that you know where the wines have come from, and they've been perfectly stored, even to the extent that the cellar was earthquake proofed. So, a lot of wine collectors now might find collections of wines, but you really don't know where the wines have been. There's been a lot of fraud in the wine collecting world, but this particular cellar is second to none. It's got perfect provenance, and so Yeah, so it's really exciting. It's going online at Christie's on July 16th. It'll be up for a few days, and if you've got the money and the thirst for the greatest wines in the world, this is going to be the place. Some of these wines have never been auctioned before. Literally, some wines have never appeared in an auction before. And
some of these will be unique examples of what they are.
Yeah, some are totally unique. And he was so well respected by l'Ursulus from Yquem and the owners of Domaine de la Romanée-Conti, and great champagne producers. And he had bottlings, labels made for him, which is almost unheard of from those sort of caliber producers.
So I'm going to turn the tables over to our friend Carol Chin, who was a young woman, grew up in a family that had its traditions in both the restaurant and hospitality world. And your dad was in dentistry as well, and was friends with Dr. Ben?
Yeah, and I did check in with my parents when I heard this, because it was just surprising to all of us. But my dad was actually roommates with Ben in dental school. So they had a third friend, Richard Louis, who was actually a pharmacy student, but they all went to UCSF together. So they all went to UC Berkeley together, and then moved to San Francisco and went to UCSF together.
Wow.
Yeah, and they all remained friends. My dad stayed with UCSF as a professor for nearly 50 years, and then Ben went into private practice down the peninsula.
And you have a story about actually going to the home, and actually you know this cellar.
Yeah, well, I think I was a little too young. Unfortunately, the marvels of it were lost on me because I was a teenager. But I do remember going to this house and just being blown away by how beautiful the ground, the koi pond, the grounds are just beautiful. And they had this sort of fabulous, is it octagonal, like atrium? I mean, it's a really stunning house. And so as a young person, I was, of course, impressed by that. But I think the thing that caught my eye, his daughter, who they're pretty close to my age. His daughter had a bedroom that had one of those round, sort of pink round beds, and her own phone line with a phone, like a princess phone. And I just remember thinking nothing could be more fabulous than that. So my parents would actually go to dinner at the house fairly often. I guess they would go down and they would dine. I guess they would do the first course in the cellar and then move. But my mom and dad, and so the story that was kind of related to me today that I thought was cute was my dad, they were served this cream of romaine soup. And I guess Mayon had gone and studied cooking, and because they loved to entertain and they loved wine, it just made sense that she became this very accomplished chef. Oh, there you go, koi pond.
That was in their back, that was their garden, the Japanese garden.
Wow.
And
just like one has in their backyard. But so my parents recalled this incident where they were having dinner at the house. What's that one? Oh, that's the cellar.
That's part of the cellar.
They should send that to Michael so he can put it up.
Wow.
But they were having this dinner and the soup, and it was really, it was really good. And I guess Dr. Chinosi looked over at his wife and said, very sort of graciously, it was like, very good, Mayon. And so my dad, after that, would kind of joke with my mom every time, either if she got the recipe from Mayon, and whenever she made the soup, or if she just something that he really liked her cooking, he would look over at my mom and be very affected and be like, very good, Brenda. And I was like, what? And they were like, it's a joke, never mind.
But now you know the whole story.
Yeah, but my dad said part of why they just thought it was so funny that how grand that house was and their lifestyle was because I guess as a student, he was a little bit of a slob. My dad said as a roommate, he was kind of the one who would throw his laundry, on the floor and wouldn't pick up after himself. So they all had a giggle that he ended up being so wildly successful and leading this.
His wife, Mayan, was such a good influence on that.
There you go.
So Bartholomew, one of the reasons I wanted to have you and Carol on today to have this conversation, and Carol was kind of cute about it. She said, well, you don't need me on. And I said, it's really important for people to know that everything that happens in the food and wine world comes from a sense of continuity. You know, when the bottles have a provenance, it means you know where the bottles came from, and you can tell what the bottles are and how well they've been kept. But in a broader sense, all of us have been taught by the people who were taught by the people that were taught by Michael Broadbent or Escoffier or the living legends of their time. And for there to be continuity for us to pass on, we become the conduits and the stewards of these stories, these collections, these not only traditions, but responsibilities. Bartholomew, you have the responsibility, born of passion, to introduce the world to these great wines. And Carol is a marvelous storyteller, and in her own right, I think the word that I'm looking for is it like an impresario? But I think it's impresariess because we're part of that continuity. And I wanted to have a conversation about continuity when it seems like everything in the food and hospitality world has hit a brick wall with the COVID. And up to as many as 70% of restaurants may not open, and our traditions are stunted and halted. I wanted to talk about how important each of you thinks that notion of legacy and continuity is, and how each of you feels a certain connection to both the past and the future through what you do. Bartholomew, I'm going to let you start with that.
Well, that's a difficult question. I mean, it's interesting. There are very, very few businesses which can last for 600, 700, 800 years. We actually represent two wineries, Bindi Casati from Italy and Louis Guntram from Germany, and they're both like from the 1300s, 1400s, and they're ancient businesses, and there are very, very few businesses in the world which get handed down generation to generation and can thrive. And really, you know, when I started Broadbent Selections, I started that in 1996, and it's a new company, although my family has been in the wine business with my father for decades. But Broadbent Selections, you know, people say, well, what's your exit strategy? What are you going to do with it? And I say, well, hopefully my grandchildren will want to run it. Hopefully my children will want to run it. It's up to them. That, you know, if they don't, they'll sell it. But I don't start. This is a lifestyle. It's not a job. It's not a business that you start to sell. It's about really, really long-term future planning.
Carol, I'll give you a shot at this.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think it is important for us to continue those stories and keep those stories alive. I don't have a family connection since my dad was a dentist, but actually your comment brings to mind something else my mom said when they were touring through the cellar one time and just remarking on how big of a collection it was. I guess Dr. Genosi said something like, not even my grandchildren, Louise's grandchildren will never be able to drink all this wine. So he knew he had quite a collection. I think I guess I came to it very lucky that my first job was with Jeremiah Tower, who we talked about on the last time I was on the show. Since that was sort of my introduction to the world of food and wine, I don't think there's a better person I could have had that introduction from. Literally working with him, you know, meeting Julia Child and Chuck Williams from Williams-Sonoma. We had a dinner at Jeremiah's house with Richard Olney, and he had brought Lulu from de Tempier, and, you know, cooked a dinner in the house, like things like that. As I think I was 25. I mean, who gets to do that? So I was lucky that was my intro. And I kind of hope that whenever people say, what's the best advice you have for young people in this business, it's always to get a mentor. And I thank God that mine was as influential and successful as wine was, but
That's where we would have probably met first, because I moved to San Francisco in 1986, and of course Jeremiah soon after that opened Stars, and we became friends, and my roommate boyfriend was a great friend of Jeremiah. But I would have met you back then, probably, if you were there at that time.
I was JT's assistant for 3 years, so 93 to 96.
Carol, do you have any young pictures of yourself? Maybe we can that'll shake his memory a little bit.
She doesn't look old enough to have been there, but
I know, right? That's the thing.
About 6 when she was
Yeah,
working
yeah.
there.
I'm sure I can find one or two, but yeah, no, I was lucky enough. I think because that was my entree into the world. I do appreciate, the connection to those that came before, and I hope that the young people today will take that to heart and seek out mentors. It may not be as formal of a system as it was in the kitchens of Europe before, but I think it's incredibly important to have someone to kind of take you under their wing and tell you things that are not taught in school, maybe life lessons.
Do you think, Carol and Bartholomew, that chefs today, young chefs, and Carol, you work with these people, do you sometimes feel that their egos get in the way and they don't take mentors? Right? They don't ask for the mentorship. Like, you and I both are friends. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think it's just this instant gratification. Like I don't need to go to Italy. I can look it up on YouTube. I don't need to go study with a Nonna how to make pasta. I can just go on YouTube. I worry that things have, when I age myself, but when I started, there was no internet, there was no Google, there was no Eater. If I wanted to learn about a restaurant, I had to go.
But there was a Bartholomew Broadbent when you started, wasn't there?
Sure.
Because think about it, all the chefs that we know, how many can we honestly say that we see young, I'm not gonna say kids, but younger people looking at them as mentors, right? Even if you're and you and I are around these guys all the time, you would know if they were mentoring people, right? Not that they don't want to, but I think that these kids are so egotistical, some of these guys, that they just think they know it all, right? And they don't ask. Like listen, my mentor was Robin Leach. I went everywhere and did everything I could with that guy because I needed to learn how those writers on Fleet Street wrote. How do you become successful? Have you heard of Fleet Street before, Bartholomew? I'm just wondering.
I mean, sorry, what was your question?
If you had heard of Fleet Street before.
Oh yeah, Fleet Street. My sister lives off Fleet Street. Yeah.
Right, but I learned from a writer from Fleet Street, right? A guy that worked for Rupert Murdoch for many, many years. No, but I would go everywhere and I would learn everything.
I was thinking about what you were saying about restaurateurs. The restaurant business is a weird business. It's one of the only businesses which glorifies people who enter it and have no experience or track record versus the great restaurateurs, great people in fields of law or any other field. They work and they become great as they age. And restaurateurs, like if Jeremiah was cooking now, he would be great. He's a legend. But these young whippersnappers come into the business, start a restaurant, get all the hot new press, and it's ridiculous. They have no experience and no track record. It's kind of the same way I feel about wines. I get very annoyed with wineries that someone starts a winery and comes out the gate with a wine that's $150 a bottle. You've got to work up to that sort of stature. It's ridiculous.
I mean, Jennifer, I don't know if Bartholomew knew, but Jennifer would follow Julia Child around like a puppy for years.
Yeah.
Wherever Julia would go, Jennifer would show up.
You can see that. That's
is that it?
Stars in probably 1994.
Yeah. Can I tell you my Julia story?
Yes, please.
So I make Madeira. I'm in Madeira business, and when I was running the Food and Wine Classic in Aspen, the reserve tastings, I was doing a Madeira tasting, and I invited Julia Child and Robert Parker to come on the panel, and a couple of Canadian guys. David Schofield and Robert Simpson. And right before the tasting, Julia came up to me and said, bananas, you've got to have bananas. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, the best food and wine pairing in the world are Madeira and bananas. And so I went to the guy at the Little Nail and said, we've got to have bananas. So they went off. I think they actually went to a shop and bought some bananas and sliced them up. And we had a little dish in front of each taster with some bananas on them. And at the end of the tasting, one of the tasters in the audience put up their hand and said, can I ask a question? I said, sure. And he said, well, can you tell us why we have bananas in front of us? And I said to Julia, Julia, can you tell them why you wanted bananas? And she looked at me and said, oh dear, I can't remember. I've lived off that story for a long time, obviously.
So, Bartholomew, we were in Napa at the opening of COPI, of the American Museum of Wine, Food, and Art, and I followed Julia around. That's a bit of an exaggeration. I'm originally from Newton, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, and we had mutual family friends like Carolyn, the Ichinozis, and I was very lucky. Even as a young person, I trick-or-treated at Julia's house.
Oh, wow.
So we would see her at Captain Martin's Fish Market, or we would see her at John Dewar's Meat Market. But the reason I'm telling this story, oh, there we go.
Jeremiah and Julia. It's a dinner we did at Stars in '94.
Oh, that's
lovely.
Oh, sorry. Here.
No, that's fantastic.
There we
go.
That's awesome. And so we were seated outside the restaurant, Bartholomew, that bore her name. It was Julia's Kitchen. And I lifted my glass to hers. And I said, Julia, what was the toast that you shared in your home with your husband, Paul, when you entertained your guests? And she clinked her glass to mine and she said, Le carillon de l'amitié, the bells of friendship. And so when I go places, especially with young people, I give them that toast and I tell them that it's their gift from Julia. I just happen to carry it to the party. And I charge them to go forward and to share that toast and clink glasses with friends old and new that they meet along the convivial trail and spread that conviviality that was so much a part of what Julia loved about all this. And you and your dad and Jeremiah. And it's what we love. It's not merely the food or just the sip. It's the entire experience. And so I hope that these young people will go forward and make this toast and share it with friends old and new when they clink glasses. But it's that tradition of clinking glasses I want to come back to, Bartholomew. When we think of Jeremiah and Stars, of course, there's a little bit of vouv in a flute. But let's talk a little bit about the great traditions, because we're going into a Father's Day weekend. We might want to choose something celebratory. We use wines in the most important moments of our lives. We make toasts, declarations, utterances that are so important to memorialize these times. I'm going to turn to you and say, help us a little bit with the kinds of things that keep these traditions alive.
Have you ever had English sparkling wine? Gusbourne.
I've not had the Gusbourne.
Gusbourne is the top producer of English sparkling wine. And talking of celebrations and Father's Day, this is what I would give my father. My father was a huge fan of, he drank champagne every morning for breakfast, but by the end he had switched to English sparkling wine because you might not know this, but sparkling wine was actually invented in England by the during Roman times. And now the climate changed back then, but now that the climate is changing again, England actually has the perfect climate for making great Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And they also have the soil that comes out from the White Cliffs of Dover, and it's the same soil that's in Classe and Champagne, but it's also got some varieties of soil in England. So it's actually making even more complex wines. And that's what I would celebrate with tomorrow. And
is that something we can find in in our better shops. Tell me about that wine and where we can find it.
Yeah, so you can, unfortunately, so we launched this a couple of years ago in America, and 95% of it was sold in restaurants, which is a little bit of a problem because obviously the restaurant business market has collapsed, sadly, for the moment. You could order this from your local wine shop. It's in most states. So you go up to your favorite wine shop and say, I want to taste the Gusborne. I want to buy the Gusborne. If you don't have time, well, wine.com ships to most states as well, and they would have it.
Well, and a lot of restaurants are selling their cellars now too.
Yeah, sadly. Our biggest selling wine is called Spy Valley. It's from New Zealand. But really for summer, it's things like Vino Verde. In this lockdown, this wine has just taken off. By the way, this flower was painted by my niece when she was 4 years old.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's been a huge success. But yeah, so traditions, by the way, you mentioned clinking of glasses. That used to be a very bad thing to do because it was a sign of distrust, because the reason they used to clink glasses originally was when they had pewter mugs, and they would hash them together so that some went from one into the other and the other into the other in case there was poison in one of them. So it fell out of fashion in England. You don't really clink glasses anymore in England. It's a bit of an American thing.
Let's talk a little bit. There seems to be a wonderful relationship between the Broadbent name and Broadbent selections and the products from Portugal that historically were the wines of, the port, the Madeiras, and we didn't see as much of the actual still wines from Portugal. We had those, what I'll call, let's say, fortified or specialty wines. Could you talk a little bit about how we've made that transition from almost exclusively enjoying the ports and Madeiras to embracing all of these marvelous wines from that portion of the Iberian Peninsula?
Yeah, well, as Carol used to say, any time spent not drinking port is time wasted. But I'm actually just wandering around in my office to pick up a couple of bottles because you prompted me.
I love the show and tell.
I love this.
We are just launching right now our range of Portuguese wines. This is the Dower White. This is the Reserve Red.
Oh, wow.
And this is our, this is the Douro Red, and this is the Reserve Red. And so Portuguese wines are spectacularly good. They were basically discovered when the English were at war with France, and we had to stop buying wines from Bordeaux. The English merchants went to look for the equivalent quality wines around the world, and of course the world back then was Europe. And they found that in northern Portugal along the Douro River, they made very similar wines to Bordeaux, and they started shipping these wines back to England, and a long sea journey and primitive winemaking methods broke them up. So they added brandy to the wine to make them into port. But now, recently, in the past 25 years, it's been sort of rediscovered that the reason port was invented was because the table wines were fantastic. And so they've been having a bit of a revival, a relaunch, basically. And I spent the past 20 years selling Portuguese wines, and then this year we've just launched. Well, we've had the Broadbent Vino Verde for about 15 years or so, but we've just launched this new range of wines from Portugal. I love
the labels.
Yeah,
it's the same flower from the niece.
The same flower. We've tweaked it. We've my niece, who was 4 when she originally painted this flower, is now 21, and she's she's saying, "Hey, where's my?" And
As she should.
Well, yeah.
You can pay her in wine now. She's legal.
Yeah, I told her I'd give her the wine when she got married. I'd supply the wine at her wedding, and I just hope she becomes a nun or something.
That's a fair trade.
Hey, I want to bring Carol back in, and Michael, please join us on this. One of the things I heard about Portuguese wines, and I share it sometimes with people, it's like finding diamonds at bargain basement prices, because at the time, the rest of the world went crazy, and wine had to be expensive, and it had to be, it had to be in the Spectator, and it had to be in Mr. and everybody, it had to have conformed to all of these sort of externals. And the proliferation of wines from around the world hit our shores and our stores. And somewhere along the way, we kind of lost the common sense that comes from putting something in your glass, smelling it, sipping it, and deciding, boy, does that really taste good to me or not. Would you address where we've come back to in wine from those heady days when 100-point Spectator scores and all of that seemed to drive things a little bit more than they do today? And how was it that Portugal seemed to be spared, if you will, from that madness?
I think you're
addressing that to me or to Bartholomew?
I don't know. I mean, I prefer my wine from a box.
Because you're classy that way, Michael.
Now I can get it in a can. How about that? And not only that, Bartholomew, you can drink your wine from a can in the can. How about that?
That's classy, Michael. That's classy.
We're going to put you back in the box in a minute. Yeah, no, it's true that Portugal has been trying to break out into the world for the past 25 years, but I think what has helped, hey, shush, sorry, that's my dog. What's helped,
what certainly wasn't your cat.
Hey, look. What has helped other regions like Spain is the fact of tapas restaurants were very popular. Spanish food was popular. Italian food is popular. So Portugal, the food is fantastic in Portugal, but it hasn't really broken into the US as a ethnic food that people are opening restaurants with. So it hasn't had that sort of leg up, sadly. But when I started Broadbent Selections, my goal was to represent the finest wines from each region. And of course, back in '96, the best French wines and Italian wines were already represented. So I went to the emerging regions like Portugal and Lebanon and South Africa, and even New Zealand was fairly new back then, and Chile and Argentina. But it's some places have been really easy. Like New Zealand has been the most fantastic success story in launching of wine. 25, 30 years ago, it didn't exist. And now it's the second biggest exporter of wine to the US. Portugal just hasn't found that sort of hook yet. Vino Verde is growing rapidly, which is great. And people are discovering it. And I think one of the things that's going towards these regions into their advantage is the fact that people are going towards lower alcohol wines and less extracted, less New World style, and they're going to these more old world style wines. It's their day is coming.
It would be doing the category a disservice to talk about ports and Madeiras in the short amount of time that we have. I'd like to ask you, would you come back and maybe come back after the auction to talk about the results of the auction, but to also maybe talk about ports and Madeiras with us and the categories that had a really influential role in establishing your family's legacy in wine, especially with the Burgundies and Bordeaux. It'll be really interesting. Do you have any predictions about what you think will happen in terms of performance? Or is this unfair because this collection is so remarkable and so clean that and inscrutable that it'll just get giant prices because it's the best of the best?
Yeah, and this collection does have great ports and Madeiras in it, but actually Christie's I think in September or October are holding a Madeira sale. It's the first time that a wine auction has ever been devoted only to Madeira, and it's going to be a spectacular. So between the Benicinosi sale in July and before we get to that Madeira sale, we should come and do a talk. I mean,
there she is.
Not to be outdone, not to be outcute.
Before we wrap all this up, Carol, I want to come back to you because we're heading into Father's Day weekend. You were talking to your dad earlier about the collection, and we'll remind everybody before we wrap today that the collection is being sold by Christie's, and that collection is one of the great collections of wine ever assembled in the modern era, in part with Michael Broadbent, Bartholomew's dad, at his role at Christie's. Wait. Look at that.
Sorry, I'm just showing you my Madeira and my ping pong room.
And that you can find today. It's in the marketplace.
Yeah, so you can buy this Broadbent Madeira most places in the US. I mean, in good wine shops, or you can order it.
And what is the tradition of Madeira that if people have not been introduced to it, when would I serve it and what would I serve it with?
Well, really, it's a sort of after dinner dessert wine. It has a very high acidity, so it goes even with balsamic or citrus. It's a sweet wine, but it has a dry finish, so it doesn't destroy desserts when you put it. The sweetness levels don't clash. But it was the biggest selling wine in America until Prohibition. It was the founding fathers' wine. It really is a July 4th wine. This is what you should be drinking on July 4th.
Should you drink it when you read this book?
Absolutely, you should be drinking it.
It pairs very well with the book, I'm sure.
Yeah, and when you start in a restaurant, I hope you mentioned that the success of a good restaurant is the ingredients. So if you're gonna cook with Madeira, you've got to cook with one true Madeira, one that you actually enjoy drinking. Otherwise, it's like using wilted salad.
What is the most famous dish in which Madeira is used in cuisine?
So I did a cooking course when I was 18, and about 2 months later, I was living in Cognac in France as a tour guide for Hennessy, and I gave myself food poisoning. So after that, I started putting Madeira in almost everything. So even with a filet mignon, I just cook it in Madeira.
Yeah. Oh, you can cook French onion soup. I bet it's good in French onion soup as well.
Oh, it's good in everything. Madeira is the most versatile wine. It's delicious, and you can cook with it, and you should cook with it. And if you feel inclined, you can even put it into the food you're cooking and stop drinking it.
We have cheese expert Laura Werlin on with us on Monday. Which of the cheeses that Laura might have with us would you pair Madeira with?
That's cheesy, Jennifer.
So the only thing, if it's a blue cheese, I put port with blue cheese, but with every other type of cheese, I put Madeira. It goes with everything. Because of that high acidity, it really goes with everything. And it's indestructible. When you open a bottle, you can keep it open for decades and it doesn't go off. Just keep its topper on so dust doesn't get in.
And keep it in the refrigerator?
Yeah, I mean, I've been telling people you can keep a Madeira in the trunk of your car all summer long and it's going to be fine. In fact, I tested that a couple of years ago. I put a bottle about this full in the trunk of my car in April, and I completely forgot about it until I was having a dinner party in August, and I had these people over and we ran out of Madeira. Well, actually, I just didn't want to go down to the cellar and open my best stuff. So I ran out to the car and I grabbed the bottle and poured it, and it was perfect, except I had to put ice cubes down because it was too hot from the trunk of the car in Virginia. But it just lasts forever. It's indestructible.
You Virginians.
Now listen, this weekend would be the Food and Wine Classic at Aspen weekend. Of course, it's been canceled this year. And that was the other reason why I was so happy to have us all assembled here. And even though we're not together, I feel like we're having our Aspen moment. And I have to ask, is there one Aspen memory from this crazy event that stands out in each of your minds?
Well, for me, it's the after parties when you're drinking at
Yes.
4, you're drinking Madeira or port at 4 a.m. in someone's condo, and it's like the oxygen just it's like kind of like being in Las Vegas, where in a casino that you're just wide awake all night long, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I probably hosted a few of those after parties, so I definitely remember those. I think for me, the one I was just kind of laughing about when I thought about it was, do you remember on Sunday they would have the classic cook-off, and it would always be maybe it was Jacques Pepin again. So yeah, and Sissy Biggers would moderate that. It'd always be like Bobby Flay versus somebody, was big name
and
chefs.
Jacques, and then and who was his other French colleague?
Well, Jacques,
I can picture him. Jean-Claude?
Maybe.
I feel like he also cooked for the French president. But one year it was Jose Andres and Ming Tsai.
Yes.
And they're cooking, and and Sissy's kind of egging them both on, and Jose's yelling across the stage at Ming, "What are you cooking? What are you cooking?" And he describes something, and Jose kind of walks over, and sticks a finger in, like, "I want to taste it." And they were joking around, but at one point, Jose grabs Ming and kisses him on the lips. and Ming is just in shock. He's just like, and he's like, "It tastes like olive oil."
That's fantastic.
One of my favorite memories that I can talk about. We were at one of the after parties, and I was with Gina Gallo and a bunch of friends, and somehow she disclosed that she'd never been taught how to saber a bottle of champagne. Maybe it was at the mom's house. And I said, "You're kidding." And she had never been taught. And so I said, I happen to have the gear. And so I taught Gina Gallo how to saber a champagne.
There you go.
Practicing, and it was, and she got it, and it was kind of fun, because that will be a tradition that lives on in another great wine family.
I think we could all write stories about Aspen. After doing it for 30 years, and one year I had to do an 8 a.m. tasting, and I just went in my pajamas. And
did anyone show up? My God, I feel like people always are hungover.
No, but, I mean, Bartholomew, seriously, your events were so coveted because you were oftentimes opening bottles that were so historic and so special and so remarkable that they may be the only time any of us would ever be in the same room with something that remarkable.
On the 25th anniversary, I did a Screaming Eagle tasting, and I had to scour the collectors to get 10 vintages of Screaming Eagle. That was pretty special.
But that was a very coveted ticket that day.
Yeah. I gave tickets away to all the Costco buyers, and so they would be totally indebted to me and buy lots of wine from me afterwards.
You're not supposed to admit that. Good Lord.
Bartholomew, do you have a house? I mean, we know you have the most extraordinary family crest and corporate logo, but do you have a house, a family toast, or a house toast, a Broadbent toast that you share with friends and guests?
A toast? Like a cheers toast? Or
yes.
No, I just open the bottle and drink it.
Well, you know what mine is?
No.
Chin chin.
Oh. I love it. And on that, the auction is coming up. We'll have all the details. We'll post them in Food and Beverage Magazine. Carol Chin Chin, I love you. Thank you so much for being here and sharing the story. And who's this?
Zoe.
Is this show online? Can I post it on my Facebook afterwards?
Absolutely, and we'll send you all the links. Bartholomew Broadbent, it is summertime coming up on the first day of summer, and there are no finer selections with which to sip the summer months in soothing fashion than Broadbent selections, including the Vino Verde Rosé, which has been declared one of the sips of the season and sips of the year. We want to thank you for coming and joining us today. I'm deeply grateful.
Wow.
Where'd you go?
Everybody's gone. You overtalked again. I told you, you got to watch. You got to see what's going on. You're chatty and chatty and chatty. You don't even know what's going on anymore, right? You love him. Stop fangirling. What's wrong with you? What's going on with you today? This is a day about me. Remember, it's my day. I got the book.
Well,
here.
we're gonna wrap up. We're gonna talk about the book. We got to talk about the book. How does it look?
It looks good. It looks like
Whether
this.
you are thinking about becoming a restaurateur or you are already in the business, Michael Politz has written a must-read, The Food and Beverage Magazine's Guide to Restaurant Success. Pick up your copy today at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million, or wherever fine books are sold.
That's all.
I have to add broadbent.com because that's where fine books are sold too.
Yes.
Right? Who knew? Who knew? All right, Jennifer, let's get a weekend going. Let's get the kids screaming.
Hey, listen.
I got to sign books now.
I want to say Happy Father's Day to you.
It was nice. Thank you. I appreciate it. Happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you.
That's a weird thing to say, but
hug your kids, count your blessings, have an extraordinary weekend. Happy summer. And remember, we'll be here next week. We've got big time fun next week with great guests, including the one and only Laura Werland. She's one of the world's leading experts on cheese, and she's always the most, I would say, popular presenter at Aspen because who doesn't love cheese?
Cheese.